CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Andrew Wilson. Our top stories this hour. A perfect touchdown. 3 taikonauts back down to Earth after 6 months assembling China's space station. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa continues to deny allegations of misconduct as the ruling ANC meets to decide its fate. OPEC agrees to maintain current oil output targets just a day before EU sanctions on Russian oil come into force. And the Chinese metropolis of Guangzhou ramps up support for business as COVID restrictions ease. Three Chinese astronauts have returned to Earth after spending 6 months on board China's space station. All members of the Shenzhou 14 crew are said to be well and will now undergo 2 weeks of medical observation. During their 6-month stay in orbit, they installed key parts of the Tiangong space station, carrying out 3 spacewalks in the process. They were replaced by a new crew early this week, China's first ever orbital handover.
I feel peaceful and steady after returning to the motherland. I'm very excited to see my family and compatriots. Let's keep our expectations high for China's aerospace development.
Our correspondent Paul Barber's been following the story. Paul, good to talk to you. Well, let's talk about how they got on in a moment. First of all, getting people back safely, still quite tricky, isn't it?
It certainly is, Andrew, yes. Well, today, Chen Dong, the commander, Liu Yang and Tsai Suzhe, who are the operators, were all installed in what's called the return capsule. So if I'll just take you through the process of that re-entry today, they were seated in this return capsule on the space station, the CSS. We should have some graphics that we can walk you through the process now with. And the spaceship then detached from the main part of the space station, and it began what was called the deceleration brake process, and that meant it turned around 180 degrees. It then separated from that thrust part of the ship and then went into orbit around the Earth 5 times. It takes about an hour and a half or so for the capsule to go around the planet, and then it entered the atmosphere. Of course, a lot of friction with the Earth's atmosphere as it comes through, and it starts to lose acceleration. It goes through this moment called the ionization blackout, when it actually loses radio contact with ground control back on Earth. But then when it gets to about 10 kilometers or so from the Earth's surface, the parachutes shot out, start to slow the capsule down even more, and then when it's just a meter above the ground, the reverse thrust engine kicks into gear, and that ensures that sort of smooth landing. So it did land safely and smoothly in the Gobi Desert in northern China's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, and as we were just hearing, that the 3 astronauts, or taikonauts as China refers to them, will be tested for a couple of weeks just to check how they're readjusting back to gravity and back to Earth after 183 days on the space station, 6 months. Oh, it sounds like they survived, perhaps even thrived on the trip. So 6 months in orbit, what did they get done? Yeah, they got a lot done, and this was a really crucial part of China's manned space program that began 30 years ago. So what they really did in this stage was finishing installing the different connectors of the 3 different modules. So it's 2 lab modules where all the scientific experiments are carried out, and then the main core hub there, which connects it all. So it's now fully integrated, and then they were preparing for the arrival of the 3 new taikonauts, and that did happen last week. They carried out some emergency evacuation strategies as well to deal with 2 berthing ships. It's the first time 2 ships have arrived on the space station at the same time. Earlier we heard from Huang Weifen, who is the chief designer of the Taikonaut system for China's manned space program. She said she was extremely happy with their performance during the mission and that they showed extraordinary mental and physical qualities. Let's have a listen.
After they entered the space station in orbit, they adapted very well and quickly to the environment and finished the job there brilliantly. A feature of the crew is that they would experience various configurations of the space station during the mission, with spaceships coming and going. They constantly experience the changes. and did many extra jobs related. They did 3 extravehicular activities which varied from each other. After the third one, they installed 2 connecting devices among the Wentian Lab module, the Mengtian Lab module, and the node cabin of the Tianhe core module. This means that the 3 modules of the station were finally linked together. This is very meaningful.
So a really meaningful moment indeed, Andrew. And on Wednesday, the new crew of the Shenzhou 15 arrived at the space station. That's Fei Junlong, the commander, along with Zhang Lu and Deng Qingming, who are the operators. And this was a really interesting moment, this handover of the 3 taikonauts to the incoming 3. And it was the first time there have ever been 6 on board the CSS, the China Space Station. And this really now is the final stage of that first part. So this is the Shenzhou 15 crew. They'll carry out really just tinkering, checking everything is okay with what the crew before have carried out. They'll be just checking that long-term residence can be carried out on the space station, and they'll be carrying out some of what we just heard there being called the extravehicular activities. These are spacewalks, just to check some parts on the new lab and connections have all been fitted properly, and they'll just be checking everything's working. And then the next stage, in 6 months' time, there'll be 3 more taikonauts will come and hand over. They're still looking for those taikonauts, and then it's really the next phase of China's space program. That will include other countries perhaps sending their astronauts up to the space station to carry out experiments.
OK, Paul, good stuff. Thanks very much indeed. Paul Barber there. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says he won't be resigning amid a scandal involving large amounts of cash stolen from his private farm. The ruling African National Congress is meeting to discuss his position after legal experts said he has a case to answer. The president's denied wrongdoing, with his spokesperson indicating he intends to stand again for the party leadership. Our correspondent Angelo Coppola has the latest from Johannesburg.
We do know that the ANC officials had their meeting on Saturday. We don't know the outcome of that yet, but we do know that they'll pass it on to their thoughts and recommendations, in fact, onto the National Working Committee, which is apparently going to be meeting today, if it hasn't met already. And while his office might be a little defiant, Ramaphosa's spokesperson was a little bit more circumspect on Friday. The report that says the president has a case to answer for is based on the non-reporting of theft, the apparent illegal recovery of that money that was stolen in a neighboring country without permission, and also the cover-up. And that's a big issue. And it's less about the money here. It's a blow to Ramaphosa, who's running his first term in office on an anti-corruption program. He hasn't been seen in public since the report was released on Thursday evening, and he also, in fact, cancelled several engagements. The question remains, though, what party leadership is going to be doing now? There is a precedent, of course. Ramaphosa's predecessor, Zuma, was essentially recalled by the ANC, and so was his predecessor, Mbeki. And from what we're hearing, the million-dollar question really is, who takes over? Is it the Deputy President, David Mabuza, as caretaker? So people are a little anxious in South Africa and waiting for that meeting that's going to be happening.
Angelo Coppola there, reporting from Johannesburg. OPEC Plus has agreed to keep oil output targets unchanged just a day before EU sanctions on Russian oil come into force. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, along with major producers Russia and Saudi Arabia, will continue to restrict supply by 2 million barrels per day, a policy which was set in October. Well, our correspondent Johannes Pleshberger is in Vienna for us. Johannes, good to talk to you. Why did OPEC stick to its policy, do you think?
Well, OPEC is sticking to its policy because they are waiting, the OPEC members are waiting how the market will deal with the ongoing uncertainty regarding slow economic growth in China, regarding soaring inflation in Europe and the United States, and especially the big question mark concerning Russian oil exports. So OPEC members want to be cautious, want to be conservative, as they always usually are, and they are sticking to their current policy, but this might change over the next month, at the beginning of next year, because the oil price has been dropping in the past month. It's gotten closer to $80 per barrel, but OPEC wants to have a higher price above $90. So as soon as fresh data concerning Chinese demand will get in, and as soon as we will know more how the markets will react to the Western price cap against Russian oil, then OPEC may further cut its production output.
And it's a very focused gathering, isn't it? They didn't even discuss, we understand, this new Western price cap on Russian oil.
Indeed, and it's actually not a big surprise because at these OPEC meetings, the members usually tend to not discuss geopolitical issues, and these meetings are rather short. And some OPEC members did say that they believe this Western price cap on Russian oil is a bit confusing, and it is also not very efficient, they say, because Russian oil has been sold mostly to China and India in the past months and not to the West. However, OPEC members are getting a bit nervous because such a price cap could be applied to any other oil exporter they fear, not only against Russia, but the United States did say that this price cap is only targeting Russia. We will know more after tomorrow when the EU's price cap will come to effect, and then we will see how the markets react and eventually also if OPEC will take further measures.
Okay, Johannes, thanks very much indeed. Johannes Pleshberger there in Vienna for us. Still ahead on CGTN, escaping the energy crisis, Greece's $20 million campaign to entice tourists to its sunny beaches during Europe's brittle winter.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more...
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us, excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Roger, clear.
We can try out the wild and crazy idea.
Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come, and this idea is coming.
I actually feel quite comfortable in isolation.
We should all be very basic when we're trying to save the world.
Oh, no.
We hope it will happen. We have to live in hope.
This week on Razor, how saving one species can save an ecosystem. On the trail of European bison.
We have here, as you can see, a nice trail to thick vegetation here, which is done by the bison. It's one of the roads they have in nature. They basically create these pathways to thick vegetation where other smaller animals can't cross.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. A perfect touchdown. 3 taikonauts back down to Earth after 6 months assembling China's space station. South Africa's President, Cyril Ramaphosa, continues to deny allegations of misconduct as the ruling ANC meets to decide its fate. And OPEC has agreed to maintain current oil output targets just one day before EU sanctions on Russian oil come into force. World leaders continue to send condolences over the death of former Chinese President Jiang Zemin, who passed away on Wednesday at the age of 96. Thailand's King Maha Vajiralongkorn says Jiang was deeply respected by the Thai people, and his visit to the country in 1999 significantly boosted bilateral relations. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari says Jiang led the way in China's reform and opening up, and his achievements in developing China's economy will be remembered by the world. And Djibouti's President Ismail Omar Guelle says Chang will be remembered for his pragmatism, innovation, talent, and vision. And outgoing Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro also sent his condolences, pointing to the fact that Brazil became the first developing country to establish a strategic partnership with China under Chang's leadership. Other world leaders have paid tribute to the former president during visits to China's embassies. Serbia's President Aleksandar Vučić expressed deep condolences at the country's embassy in Belgrade. He spoke about China's support for his country under Chang's presidency. In South America, the presidents of Guyana and Suriname also visited Chinese embassies, both leaders praising Chang's efforts to promote relations and boost bilateral trade. And China's been relaxing some of its strict COVID rules in the past few days. In the southern city of Guangzhou, many companies have reopened despite the continuing outbreak. Our correspondent, Cao Chu-Fung, reports now.
All companies are now allowed to reopen, except those in high-risk areas, which are now limited to a particular building or unit. A few large e-commerce enterprises are in Haizhu district, which is the hardest hit area in this outbreak. The reopening of business is particularly good news for them, with several online shopping festivals scheduled in December.
The adjustment of the epidemic prevention policy is very timely and of great significance to us. We'll hold the annual promotion activity on December 8th, and returning to work will be very motivating for our staff. We've also taken measures for epidemic prevention and control.
The new round of outbreaks started in Guangzhou late in October. The city's Municipal Commerce Bureau says its economy, especially the consumer market, was significantly affected by the epidemic in November. However, local authorities have come up with plans to help businesses.
Municipal and district-level commercial departments will serve as waiters for enterprises. First, we will connect the industrial chains to supply chains. Second, we will help enterprises explore new markets through multiple channels. And third, we will provide real financial support for businesses.
Guangzhou local authorities say they are not giving up on managing the virus. Rather, the new policies are to reflect recent control measures announced by the central government that also take into consideration that there is a low rate of serious illness during this outbreak. Cao Chu-Feng, CGTN, Guangzhou.
Iran's Prosecutor General says the country's morality police force has been shut down. Mohammad Montazeri was speaking at a religious conference and was asked whether or not the group had been disbanded. It follows months of deadly unrest and widespread protests over the death in custody of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. There's been no official confirmation that the group's being taken off the streets or that the country's mandatory dress code will be changed. A volcano has erupted in Indonesia, spewing ash 15 kilometers into the air and forcing the evacuation of nearly 2,000 people. Authorities in East Java province have issued their highest alert level. There are no immediate reports of casualties, and the Transport Ministry said there was no impact on air travel. Brazilian football star Pelé says he feels strong and has a lot of hope after being admitted to hospital in Sao Paulo amid his battle with colon cancer. The 82-year-old had a tumour removed last year and has been undergoing treatment. Pelé's comments followed media reports that he was being moved to palliative care after failing to respond to chemotherapy. Day 2 of the knockout round at the World Cup in Qatar. France and Poland are into the second half, with France leading 1-0 thanks to a goal from Olivier Giroud, making him France's all-time top scorer with 52 goals. Poland are heading out of the tournament if the score stays the same. England face Senegal later on, hoping for a spot in the quarterfinals. Well, our correspondent Philip Crowther is in Doha for us. Philip, good to talk to you. France facing Poland now. How's the match going so far?
Yeah, France looking good, particularly, of course, because of that late goal scored by Olivier Giroud in the first half, right at the death there. And it is indeed, as you said, a record-breaking goal for him. 52 now for the French national team, putting him past some of the French greats like Thierry Henry, for example. He was put through by Kylian Mbappé, who has 3 goals in the tournament already. He is, of course, the young generation, if you will, for the French team. Olivier Giroud, the older generation, who is also now on 3 goals for the tournament. This is an entertaining, French team, much more so than it was in the last game in the group phase, when Didier Deschamps, the French coach, did put out all the changes he possibly could. Well, all of that has been reversed all over again for this second-round game against Poland. All of France's attacking might is back on the pitch for the defending world champions, the aforementioned Olivier Giroud and Kylian Mbappé, of course, but also Ousmane Dembélé, Antoine Griezmann. It is quite the lineup that the French team has there. But the Polish team, you might remember, have come in for a lot of criticism for their defensive displays, particularly in their defeat to Argentina, when Poland were not really able to come up with any attacking threat, despite the presence of one of the great goal scorers of his generation, Robert Lewandowski, on the field again now for Poland. But Poland have done that little bit more. Chances cleared off the line in the first half, for example, and Robert Lewandowski, but also the players around him in attack, looking particularly good. France right now fighting to get into the quarter-finals, where they would be going up against the winners of the clash between England and Senegal later today.
Well, what about that match, Philip? England up against the African Cup champions. What can we expect from that?
Well, look, it's the very first time that these two teams will be playing each other. England and Senegal have never played each other before, but they know each other in part because 10 of the players for the Senegal national team play in England. 6 of them play in the English Premier League. Among them is one who only recently moved away from England, in fact, and went to Bayern Munich, but who's not on the pitch here, and that is really the biggest problem here for Senegal, the players who are missing. Sadio Mane, who is the second best player in the world right now, according to recent awards. He got injured before the tournament and is not even here. There are others missing on the field for Senegal that are crucial players. Idrissa Gana Gueye, for example, is a key midfielder for Senegal as well. Won't be on the field for a game where really England are the favourites by quite a stretch. England have convinced so far at this World Cup, with the stalemate against the United States, that 0-0 draw being possibly an exception. England have scored 9 goals already, have only conceded 2, and have on paper a very, very strong team indeed. This is a particularly interesting game to look at because it's a clash of different systems. It's a clash of teams as well, as I mentioned at the top there, who have never met each other before. It's going to be a first time for Senegal and England.
Well, I do hope you enjoy it, Philip. Good talking to you. Thanks very much indeed. Philip Crowther there in Doha for us. As energy costs rise across Europe, some people are now taking an opportunity to head off to warmer destinations. Greece is one of a number of countries trying to draw visitors in for the winter with a $20 million advertising campaign. Our correspondent Evangelos Tsipsas now reports.
Famous for its golden beaches, the sun, and its medieval city, the island of Rhodes in the South Aegean Sea is a magnet for Northern Europeans. More than 3 million flock here every summer, but some also come in the winter.
Das ist total. Egal, es regnet oder
It's totally worth coming here in the winter. I'm enjoying it even more now with fewer people. It doesn't matter if it's raining or it's a bit windy, the temperature is perfect.
Hamburg momentan, ich denke,
I'm from Hamburg, where it's about 4 degrees right now. But here in Rhodes, it's 18. There's just no contest.
While Natalie visits the island in the winter because there are fewer tourists, others travel here for more practical reasons.
People coming here to save money for their home energy bills, for example. Especially these days, specifically for Britain, the economy is not doing great as it used to be because of Brexit, because of the Ukrainian war and the energy bills, because of the COVID. So coming here is good for people to get away from all of this.
In a bid to capitalize from the energy crisis, the Greek government launched a series of winter tourism campaigns aimed at attracting European visitors seeking an alternative to the bitter cold and high energy bills. Places like Santorini, Crete, and Rhodes were high on the list, as temperatures there remain in the high teens. But the campaign to advertise Greece abroad hasn't attracted as many visitors as expected.
Και η καμπάνια εγώ θεωρώ ότι ήταν σωστή κατεύθυνση, τουλάχιστον εγώ αυτό το οποίο είδα.
The campaign from the ministry is in the right direction. I think they're doing things right, but when it comes to winter tourism, Spain will always be the first choice. Hotels and tour operators just have more exposure, so competing for winter tourism is very difficult, as it's a smaller market.
While it's true that fewer people travel abroad than in the summer, tapping into the winter market could be quite easy when you have the two key ingredients: established tourist facilities and the sun. But what makes it difficult, according to tour operators, is the message the government is sending.
Where sometimes tourist boards and local governments, they can overcomplicate things sometimes, and the message doesn't necessarily always come across. So I think there needs to be a simple and clear message, and maybe broaden that out a little bit, because we see very little in the UK.
It seems that making Greece a winter destination for travelers to enjoy and save might need more than just the lure of warmer weather. Evangelos Ipsas for CGTN from the island of Rhodes.
Headlines again for you. A perfect touchdown. 3 taikonauts are back down to Earth after a 6-month mission assembling China's space station. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa continues to deny allegations of misconduct as the ruling ANC meets now to decide his fate. And OPEC has agreed to maintain current oil output targets just a day before EU sanctions on Russian oil come into force. And that is the world today. Thanks for watching. We're on smart TV apps, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube and Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app. And in the UK, 24 hours a day on free. More news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's Razor. From now, all of the team in London, goodbye.